Hey everybody, this is Mike Schrank. Welcome to this series of 10 bot demos and code reviews for the book, Developing Bots with Selenium Python. If you got here via a link from the book, well, thank you. If you got here because you used a shared link, well, thank you as well. But please remember to like and subscribe below.
The creative misapplication of technology.
Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Mike, and this is project number 2 in a series of 10 projects that go with my book, Developing Bots with Selenium Python. In our last project, we put together a minimal script that was able to load Selenium and load the browser and basically prove that our configurations were good and we can go forward. This project is an important project because we are going to be developing something that we're going to be using in the next 8 bot projects. And this is a framework in which to operate things in. Now, I use the word framework a little bit tongue-in-cheek because it's not that extensive, but it gives you some idea of what you can do and what you should do if you're going to be developing bots in a production environment. Let's go through the code initially here first. What is a bot framework to begin with? Well, in this case, it's a bunch of code that runs before the bot and some code that runs after the bot. And basically what it does is it establishes some paths, it loads some libraries, and it just kind of establishes some good practices to use going forward. So let's take a look at what we're doing over here. The very first thing we do is we define the script name because we're going to be using that in logging, which is a big thing that the framework offers. We import a few Python libraries. This is the minimum number. I think there's one project where we use one additional library that's not shown here. But when that happens, we'll cover that. Here we import Selenium like we did last time, but here we're also importing a couple of other things from WebDriver. By is, if you know the JavaScript command, find element by, that's kind of what this is. Keys allows you to enter things into text boxes and whatnot. We record the start time and we put it into something human readable. So some of the things that we import here are our paths to the log file, and we get our path to the Chrome driver, both important. And if we're not able to do any of these things, if we're not able to find those, we just exit. Then we try importing 3 libraries. First one is libbot, which has a bunch of general purpose bot functions that we use. There's libparse, which we use extensively for parsing text. And then we have libselenium that has a couple of Selenium specific functions we use over and over again. For example, like loading the WebDriver. And if we're not able to do that, we just bomb out. We manage logs. What I typically do is I just erase any prior logs. You might want to do it differently. You might want to save a day's worth or 2 days worth or somehow cycle them through. Be aware of the fact that if you never delete a log, they tend to pile up. So this write log is a function that is in libbot. And every time we do something of significance, we write it off to the log. This is really useful for a number of reasons. It's really useful when you're developing, so you can paste, see what your bot thinks it's doing. It's really useful in debugging. If you have a bot that failed 4 hours ago, you can go back to the logs and see what it did. What's nice is that everything we write out to the console also gets written to the log file. So one of the things we do is we specify the log file name. And the log files, the names are all time-stamped. So this is important. Here we're using a function in libselenium to load WebDriver. The reason this is nice is because we know that we're always loading the same WebDriver because we might have different versions or different flavors. And we know that it's always being done the same way, which makes it so much nicer when you've got a whole bunch of bots running on the same machine, just to know that there's some consistency there. Again, in libselenium, we are doing a couple things. We're setting the window size and we're setting the window position. One thing I learned, I tend to develop on really big 4,000 pixel screens. It's really nice to launch these things, at least initially, up in the upper left-hand corner. If you don't do that, and if you're accessing these things on a phone or a laptop, you don't get to see your bot run because it's off screen. This is where we start what I refer to as the payload, and we're going to talk about the payload on every successive bot. The payload is basically where you put your bot code. And here, again, we're just demonstrating the framework. So we're basically doing what we did in the last one, where we're just loading a hello world sign. But you notice we're doing it a little bit differently. We are now logging things. We have random delays. One of the things that I talk about a lot is making bots looking human. There's a whole chapter in that in the third section of the book. So we implement random delays, and we get to see a nice little countdown as it's counting down. What else do? We do a little bit more than we did in the first one. We also are going to write the web page to a file, and the way we do that is we're using a command in libbot, which gets the contents of a web page, and we are just going to assign that to a variable called HTML. And then we're going to use libbot to write a file called pagecontents.html. And then we're going to capture a screenshot. And this is how that is done. That's just done through the driver, a function called save screenshot. We give it a name, and that is the end of the payload. What happens at the end of the payload? We close gracefully. And if you remember the first one, the sequence, we do that automatically here, and we log it. All right, that was the code review. Let's run this bot. Oh, before we run the bot, let's look in the directory, and we can see that there's nothing in here other than this file, which is our bot that we're going to run here. It's that is our Python script. Let's run the bot. It loads the page, and it leaves us this really nice looking log. We can see everything is timestamped. We got this thing called, identifies that it's framework.py. Here we've got the standard stuff that happens when you load WebDriver. It tells us the page size, where the window is positioned. It tells us that it waited after it fetched the web page. This gives us just all kinds of useful information here. It tells us when the bot closed. And if we look over here, we can also see that our stuff got loaded. We have a screenshot. Let's take a look at that. There it is. Isn't that pretty? And we also have something called page contents. Let's take a look at that. So this right here is the contents of the page that we just downloaded. And basically, it's just an image that's in a table. But it proves that we're able to do all that stuff. We did it all in the framework. Look for more framework fun in the projects coming up ahead. The next one is a project on Ajax and active content. And again, that's something that's very difficult to do without Selenium. But it's very easy to do with Selenium. So that's a quick project. I'll see you guys then.